Billy hated visiting his Aunt Martha. Her old house creaked and groaned. The air always felt cold. Plus, she had twin nieces close to his age. They were creepy. He shivered. His mom pulled up to the house. It loomed over them, dark and imposing.
Don't be like that, Billy.
He knew she was trying to sound cheerful, but her voice wavered. She was a little scared too. Billy dragged his feet. He didn't want to go inside. He knew something wasn't right about this house, or the twins. Billy's aunt greeted them at the door. They ushered him inside quickly. It was even colder inside. The twins stood silently in the hallway. They stared at him. Their eyes were intense, empty.
Hello, Billy.
Hello, Billy.
Their voices were monotone. He avoided their gaze. He wanted to go home. His parents left after dinner. They promised to be back in the morning. Billy was trapped. The house was dark. Shadows seemed to dance in the corners. The only light came from a flickering lamp in the hallway. He was shown to his room. It was at the end of the hall, right next to the twins' room. He could hear them whispering. Their voices sent chills down his spine. He tried to ignore them. He just wanted to sleep and forget this night. The next morning, Billy wandered into the dusty attic. Cobwebs hung from every corner. In the center sat a wooden toy box. It was ornately carved. It looked ancient. He reached out a hand. The wood was ice cold. He lifted the heavy lid. Inside, nestled among old toys, lay a porcelain doll. It wore a yellow dress. Its blue eyes seemed to follow him. This doll was different. This doll felt alive. He picked up the doll. It was light. Too light. It felt hollow. He turned it over in his hands, examining every inch of it. The doll's eyes seemed to follow him, and its painted smile felt more like a sneer. Billy couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. He had found the doll in the attic, hidden away in an old dusty box. Why had it been hidden? And why did it feel so eerie? Then he heard it. A faint whisper. It was so soft that he almost thought he had imagined it. But there it was again, clearer this time. The whisper seemed to be coming from the doll itself. Billy's heart raced as he strained to hear the words. The room was silent, save for the faint, ghostly whisper that sent chills down his spine.
Put me back, it seemed to say. The voice was soft but insistent, almost pleading. Billy's hands trembled as he held the doll. He could feel the weight of its gaze, and the whisper seemed to echo in his mind. Was he going crazy? Or was the doll really speaking to him?
Billy jumped. He dropped the doll back in the box. His heart pounded in his chest as he slammed the lid shut. He backed away, his eyes never leaving the box. The whisper had stopped, but the eerie feeling lingered. He had to get out of the attic, now.
Who said that? Billy's voice was barely a whisper itself. He looked around the dimly lit attic, half expecting to see someone hiding in the shadows, but there was no one. Just the old toys and forgotten memories that filled the room. The silence was deafening.
He raced downstairs. The twins sat at the table. They sipped their milk. They didn't look up. Their faces were blank, almost as if they were in a trance. Billy's mind raced. Had they heard the whisper too, or was it all in his head?
Did you say something? Billy asked. His voice was shaky, and he could feel the fear creeping into his words. The twins didn't respond immediately. They just continued to sip their milk, their eyes staring blankly ahead.
They giggled. A high-pitched, unsettling sound. It was the kind of giggle that made the hairs on the back of Billy's neck stand up. It was almost as if they were mocking him, enjoying his fear. The sound echoed in the quiet room, amplifying the eerie atmosphere.
We're just drinking our milk, one of them finally said. The voice was calm, almost too calm. It didn't match the unsettling giggle that had just filled the room. Billy felt a shiver run down his spine. Something was definitely wrong.
But Billy could have sworn he heard their voices from the attic. The whisper, the giggle, it all seemed to come from up there. He glanced back at the stairs, the darkness of the attic looming above. He knew he had to go back. He had to find out what was really going on. But the thought of facing that eerie doll again filled him with dread. He took a deep breath, steeling himself for what was to come. The mystery of the whispers in the night was far from over. That night, sleep evaded Billy. Every creak of the floorboards made him jump. The whispering continued. He could feel the doll's eyes on him. He hid under the covers. He just wanted the sun to rise. Finally, morning came. He rushed to the attic. The doll sat in the toy box. Its blue eyes were wide open, staring right at him. He felt a cold shiver run down his spine. He had to know more about this doll. He found his aunts in the kitchen.
"Who is Jane?" he asked.
The twins who were helping set the table froze. Their eyes widened. Aunt Martha sighed.
"Jane was our sister," she said softly. "She loved that doll." She pointed to the one in the attic. "We were triplets."
Billy shivered.
"What happened to her?" he asked.
His aunt looked away.
"It was a tragic accident," she murmured. "She drowned in the well out back. She was only 7. We were playing hide and seek. She wouldn't say another word."
Section 8, locked away. The attic was a place of forgotten memories, a repository of old dusty relics that had long since lost their purpose. But for Billy, it was a place of mystery and fear. Billy couldn't shake the feeling that Jane's spirit was trapped in that doll. Every time he looked at it, he felt a chill run down his spine. The doll's eyes seemed to follow him, its expression unchanging yet somehow menacing. He remembered the stories his grandmother used to tell about spirits and how they could attach themselves to objects. He raced back to the attic, a plan forming in his mind. He had to do something, anything, to free Jane's spirit. His heart pounded in his chest as he took the stairs 2 at a time, the old wood creaking under his weight. He could almost hear Jane's voice, faint and distant, calling out to him. He carefully wrapped the doll in a blanket, his hands trembling. He wanted to make sure it was secure, that it couldn't escape. The blanket was old and worn, but it would have to do. He whispered a silent apology to Jane, hoping she would understand. Then he lugged the heavy toy box down from the attic. It was filled with old toys, relics of a childhood that seemed so distant now. Each step was a struggle, the weight of the box almost too much for him to bear, but he was determined. He had to see this through. He had to get rid of it. The thought echoed in his mind, a mantra that kept him going. He couldn't let Jane's spirit remain trapped. He had to find a way to set her free. The box felt like it was getting heavier with each step, but he pressed on. He had to get Jane out of the house. He paused at the front door, hesitating. What if he was wrong? What if this didn't work? But he couldn't let doubt stop him now. He took a deep breath and stepped outside, the cool night air hitting his face. He snuck down to the basement, his footsteps echoing in the silence. The basement was even darker and more foreboding than the attic. He had always been afraid of it, but now he had no choice. He had to be brave, for Jane's sake. It was dark and damp. The air was thick with the smell of mold and decay. A single flickering light cast eerie shadows on the walls. He could hear the sound of water dripping somewhere in the distance, each drop like a ticking clock counting down the seconds. Cobwebs brushed against his face, making him shiver. He brushed them away, trying to ignore the feeling of tiny legs crawling on his skin. He had to stay focused. He couldn't let his fear get the better of him. He found an old trunk, covered in dust and rust. It looked like it hadn't been touched in years. He hoped it would be strong enough to contain the doll. He opened it, the hinges creaking in protest. He placed the toy box inside and slammed it shut. He felt a sense of relief wash over him, but also a lingering doubt. Had he done enough? Would Jane's spirit finally be at peace? Only time would tell. For now, all he could do was hope. Section 9, years later. Time has a way of moving forward even when the past clings to us like a shadow. The years rolled by, but the memories of that fateful weekend never truly left Billy. Billy never spoke of that weekend. The events that transpired in Aunt Martha's house were locked away in the deepest recesses of his mind, a secret he kept even from himself. The memory of the doll and the whispering twins haunted his dreams. Night after night he would wake up in a cold sweat, the echoes of their eerie voices still ringing in his ears. He tried to forget the feeling of dread that clung to him in that house. The oppressive atmosphere, the sense of being watched, it all lingered like a dark cloud over his life. But he never quite could. No matter how hard he tried to push those memories away, they always found a way to resurface, especially in the quiet moments when he was alone with his thoughts. He grew up, got married, and had a son of his own. He built a life filled with love and laughter, determined to create a different reality for his family. He tried to give his son a happy childhood. He wanted to shield him from the darkness that had once enveloped his own youth. A childhood free of fear and shadows. He filled their days with joy and light, hoping that the past would remain just that, the past. He pushed the memories of his Aunt Martha's house to the back of his mind. He avoided talking about it even when curiosity about his childhood arose, but some things refused to stay buried. One day, while cleaning out the attic, he stumbled upon an old dusty box. Inside, he found the very doll that had haunted his dreams for so long. The sight of it brought back a flood of memories, and he realized that some parts of the past are never truly gone. They linger, waiting for the right moment to resurface, reminding us that the shadows of yesterday are never far behind. Section 10. A Son's Curiosity. One day Billy's son Sam came home from school. He was excited.
Dad, I found something amazing in the basement!
He dragged Billy towards the stairs. Billy's blood ran cold. He knew exactly what his son had found. He had hoped it would stay hidden. He had hoped the darkness would keep it contained. But some things have a way of finding their way back. He followed Sam down the creaking steps. His heart pounded in his chest. Section 11. The toy box opens again. The old trunk lay open. The wooden toy box sat beside it. Sam held up a porcelain doll. Her blue eyes sparkled in the dim light.
Isn't she pretty, Dad?
He smiled. He didn't feel the chill that ran down Billy's spine.
Her name is Jane.
Sam whispered. A cold wind seemed to sweep through the basement. Billy's blood turned to ice. He knew Jane was back.